Popularly known as the Great White Shark for his look and assertive style of play, Greg Norman is one of the very few golfers that have succeeded on the golf course and as an entrepreneur. He has etched a special niche for himself and now runs a LIV Tour, which offers mind-blowing prize money for golfers. Of course, this is alongside the huge controversy surrounding the Saudi-backed league. However, Greg Norman's career path in golf has been an interesting one, from caddying for his mother to serving as an assistant professional working at a golf club in Sydney at the age of 20. The golfer once earned only $38 a week as a trainee at a golf pro shop, but is today worth millions of dollars. How did he achieve this feat? Welcome to Golf Links. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel to get notifications on new video drops. Born February 10, 1955 to Australian parents, Mervyn and Toini Norman, you may be shocked to know that Greg Norman grew up with a love for rugby and cricket. Golf just wasn't in the picture yet. He also aspired to become a professional surfer and was actively working towards it. However, things became completely different when Greg's mother inspired a change of heart. Toini Norman was a pretty good golfer who played professionally. While searching for a caddy, she decided to give this important role to Greg Norman. Caddying for his mother was all the young man needed to dump all other sporting ambitions and take up golfing. Although he began his golf career later than most golfers, that didn't stop the astounding success that trailed him all through his career. From caddying for his mother, Greg Norman made a steady rise through the ranks until he turned professional in 1976 at 21. He started with guns blazing and quickly clinched his first title at the West Lakes Classic in South Australia. In 1977, Greg joined the European Tour, where he won the Scotland Martini International. In 1980, Greg Norman became the subject of media attention with a dominant display at the French Open. He clinched the French Open title with 10 shots ahead of the runner-up. Greg Norman then sealed the Sweden-Scandinavian Enterprise Open, setting a new course record in the process. The same year, he went home with the Suntory World Match Play Championship, the Australian Open. At this point, Greg Norman had begun to stand out for his unique style of play. This Australian golfer was aggressive with his handling of the golf club and favored the long-range driving style, which earned him a reputation as the world's best long ball driver. In 1981, Greg Norman recorded his third Martini International victory and a British Masters win. Greg Norman replicated his 1981 form in 1982. He was able to win the British Masters for the second consecutive time and also recorded 3 other European tournament wins. All the while, the US PGA Tour was yet to gain a taste of Greg Norman. That happened in 1983. Greg Norman opened his PGA account in 1984 with an emphatic 5-stroke win at the Kemper Open. At the US Open the same year, he became a subject of attraction for many spectators and followers of the event, with a display that saw him head to a playoff with former champion Fuzzy Zoeller. Although Greg Norman lost to Fuzzy Zoeller in the sudden death playoff, the Australian golfer soon picked himself up for a victory at the Canadian Open. He followed the 1985 season up with wins at the National Panasonic Australian Open and the Toshiba Australian PGA Championship. The year 1986 was perhaps Greg Norman's best outing. He recorded 11 wins across all event tours. However, he will also fondly remember the season for having held the lead for all the majors he appeared in, without winning the Grand Slam. The good news is that he earned his first major title that same year. Greg Norman won the Open Championship in elegant style. Fellow golfer Tom Watson regarded the victory as the greatest he had ever seen. The Australian golfer's exploits in 1986 saw him topple the prize money list of the PGA Tour and the Australian Order of Merit list. All these achievements made Greg Norman the #1 ranked golfer in the world. Despite having to undergo the heartbreak of being denied victory in the 1987 Masters event, Greg Norman shook off his disappointment to win the Australian Masters a few weeks after. He proceeded to clinch the Australian Open while setting a new record as well. Meanwhile, he had lost his place at the top of the world ranking to Seve Ballesteros, but the Australian Open victory meant that he reclaimed his spot at the top. In 1988, Greg Norman warmed the heart of all golf faithful by granting the wish of a leukemia-stricken teenager to watch watch Greg Norman play. Inspired by the boy, the golfer went on to clinch the Heritage Golf Classic and offered the trophy to the young lad. Greg Norman ended the year with an induction into the Australian Sport Hall of Fame. In 1990, despite an outing below par compared to his standard, he won the Australian Masters and still ended the year top of the PGA Tour money list. After a few months of playing before expectations, Greg Norman picked up himself to seal his second major at the 1993 Open Championship. In 1994, he replicated his 1986 form by winning the Memorial Tournament for the second time in his career, the NEC World Series of Golf, and some impressive finishes in other competitions. Greg Norman regained his spot at the top of the world golf ranking from Nick Price and held the position for more than 6 years. He went on to win the Anderson Consulting World Championship in 1997. For most of the 2000s, Greg Norman began to withdraw from competitions due to back and hip injuries. In 2005, he spent more time focusing on other businesses, but dived into golf again in 2008. He took advantage of the open window to hold a one-year record as the most senior golfer at 53 to become a 54-hole leader in a major. However, Greg began to retire from the active golf scene and instead opted to focus more on being a golf analyst and businessman. Of all other business endeavors of Greg Norman, his involvement with the LIV Tour has continued to generate much controversy among PGA fans, including current and former PGA stars. The LIV Tour provides another alternative to the PGA Tour for golfers, and the Saudi hierarchy accounts for a large part of its funding. Many famous former PGA stars like Phil Mickelson, Lee Westwood, Ian Poulter, and Dustin Johnson have since joined the train of the LIV Tour, with many still to come. However, many have continued to question the integrity of the LIV Tour on the back of various accounts of human rights abuses by the Saudi royals and allegations of whitewashing. Greg Norman, who assumed the role of LIV boss, has remained unshaken in the face of criticism. He regards the PGA Tour as hypocritical, mainly because a good number of its sponsors are Saudi-owned companies. The idea for an alternative to the PGA Tour is not a new one, as Greg Norman had the idea several decades earlier. However, this dream died a natural death due to a lack of funding and support. Today, Greg is ready to make this a reality, with the LIV Tour fully ready to take the golfing scene by storm. Meanwhile, the Australian golfer's relationship life is just as drama-filled as his golfing career. Before his marriage to Laura Andrassy, an American flight attendant, in 1981, Greg Norman was in a brief relationship with Sue Barker, an English tennis star. However, his marriage to Laura Andrassy produced 2 kids before a divorce in 2006 that saw Laura walk away with a whopping $105 million in the divorce settlement. In June 2008, Greg Norman found love again with Chris Evert, a previous world #1 tennis sensation. However, their romance lasted less than 2 years. Kristen Kittner, an interior designer, was the next lucky bride as she married the golfer in 2010, while Greg Norman's son served as his best man. The Australian former golf star and businessman is, however, blessed with 2 grandchildren. Apart from the millions of dollars earned by Greg Norman from his endorsement deals and winnings on the golf course, he owns various ventures in different industries, including clothing lines, real estate, eyewear, wine production, eateries, and private equity funds. Greg Norman is reportedly worth a staggering $500 million. He's certainly not your regular kind of golfer. Another remarkable moment in Greg Norman's breathtaking history was in 2020, when he became bedridden with COVID-19. While still receiving treatment, Greg Norman shared a cryptic message on his social media page saying that he couldn't wait to leave his ugly situation to build a great future. For an already established entrepreneur and one of golf's most decorated players, many began to speculate about the future for Greg Norman. As it happened, he was announced by the LIV Golf Investment as its first founding CEO, in a deal that many believe could be worth as much as $200 million. However, he has, at some point, stated that part of his bucket list for the future is to dive below the Antarctic ice pack. That's definitely daring. Greg Norman is also a renowned philanthropist, certainly one of the biggest we've seen among golfers. The Greg Norman Golf Foundation and the Cure Search National Childhood Cancer Foundation are 2 influential platforms Greg Norman prominently uses to give back to society and aid the cause of underprivileged kids. The Australian golfer is known for pulling surprising moves in his professional and personal life, and there's no doubt that he has more up his sleeves.